All right. It looks like we are live. How is everyone today? Just going to check on some things here and make sure everything's working. A little shout in the chat here. All right. Just going to give it a couple seconds here on YouTube for people to file in. Make sure everything is working just fine. Looks like things are going all right. Appears to be. Very good. All right, what's up? Got them, Raj. All right, awesome. Love seeing it. Well, hello. Thank you so much for joining me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and today on the Adobe Creative Cloud YouTube channel, it's Fun Audio Fridays, where I'm going to be just kind of doing some random things in Adobe Audition, starting with reviewing and doing a little bit of remixing on a couple of sessions that I'm currently working on for another collaborative EP that I'm actually part of with a blues artist named Fuzzy Island. And you can find the existing EP actually right here on YouTube Red, or YouTube Music, I should say, as well as Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, and anywhere else that music is streamed or sold. What's up, Bill Vincent? And I'm actually going to be going through a couple of new tracks, additional tracks, sessions that I did with Fuzzy. Kind of an interesting thing is that all of these have been recorded over a period of nearly 2 decades. And it was just this last year that we finally decided to compile them all and put out a couple of EPs, a couple of records around them. So we'll be going through and reviewing a couple of those tracks. And then also just taking random audio questions if you have them in Adobe Audition. Armando, how are you? PainTab, how's it going? So, if you just want to kick back and chill and listen and kind of watch, that'll be cool. I'm going to be doing a bunch of stuff with plugins primarily. I use a lot of plugins in my workflows. I use a lot of our native effects too. I've talked about this a lot. But particularly for this style of music, which is acoustic blues, really sort of that was kind of born in the early 20th century. Fuzzy's style is kind of in the post Robert Johnson vein, but more along the lines of Mississippi Fred McDowell, Mississippi John Hurt, Furry Lewis. If you've ever listened to any of those artists, his style is very reminiscent of that. And everything is always captured live. We've always done stuff live in studio, and you're going to get to see and hear some of those sessions today. And as mentioned, if you've got audio questions or any specific audio workflows that you'd like to see or learn more about, if I can find an appropriate asset to show it to you with, I will happily do that. So don't be shy. Or just kick back and listen to some acoustic blues. All right? So why don't we go ahead and switch my screen over and do that now. And it's also worth pointing out, too, that I've got, I mentioned yesterday on the Premiere Pro stream that I'm working on setting up some, I have a bunch of different cameras that I've yet to really wire in. I haven't quite figured out what I want to do in terms of how I want it viewed. But you can see here, just briefly, I've got this other side cam, which is kind of hovering over the keyboards. Unfortunately, that's not allowing you to see all of the cool rack stuff, which is all the really cool, like, old school samplers and processors and compressors and tube preamps and everything in here, all of which kind of make up the sound, as well as my Native Instruments rig here, which is a huge part of that too. So in any case, ask away if you have any questions, and I hope you enjoy the session. Got them, Raj. Can you clear my doubts? Sure. Perhaps. What is your question? Feel free to ask. Armando, live sessions, how it should be done. Yes, my friend. I am all about that performance. If you listen to any of my recordings on any of those services that I mentioned, I capture everything live. Yes, sometimes there are little overdubs to fix things here and there, but 95% of the time, everything is a straight-ahead live performance. Nothing is sequenced with me. I do everything live, and it's just how I like to do it. You know, there was a period, in fact, the 22nd of this month, just a couple days ago, there was a song that I composed 31 years ago, which was a very brilliant title, May 22nd, 1987. And I was reminded of that session, and that was one of the last times, curiously, that I did like a full-on MIDI production. I still occasionally will do some MIDI-based things, largely with others, not for myself. But I just don't use MIDI. I use MIDI in terms of controlling devices, but not in terms of sequencing. So, yes. Okay, we've got some questions. Okay, what software am I using for streaming? So, Danilo, I use Wirecast. Wirecast Pro version 9, recently updated. I sometimes use OBS as well. But Wirecast is just wonderful, and it just allows so much flexibility, and you can do so many things. And I mean, you can with OBS too. OBS is great, and like I said, I default between the two of them, but generally, Wirecast is running most of the time. So okay, so let's take a listen. So we're just gonna review first this raw track. So just before I get started, if you have listened or are interested at all in listening to the existing EP that's out there, you can kind of compare for reference. It's called 2 Centuries of American Music. You can either search on my name or Fuzzy Island, and you'll find it. So this is the actual session for one of the songs on that EP, called Anytime. The song is from 1916, which is why the album is called 2 Centuries of American Music. All of the songs on that 5-song EP were recorded in the last 2 centuries. There's even a track in there from 1876. And most of the other songs are pre-1921. This one's from 1916, and as you can see here, we did about... So this looks like this. Okay, you can actually see. So, and in typical blues fashion, whenever I record with Fuzzy, usually I never know exactly what we're going to play, and I never know when he's ready to go. So what you can actually see here, in fact, I'm curious. It's probably me like moving the mics around and stuff. Once I get things mic'd up and ready, I just start rolling, because ultimately we might get that best take, might be the first time around. I never really know. So it looks like at the top here, this is some of that stuff, like me just kind of getting set up.
Okay, once your mom's over and you're...
Okay, let's talking random stuff here.
You know what they say, the...
Okay. Yeah, so this is just like... He's still just talking, kind of getting ready, but we're already rolling tape. And then we go into a take, let's see. So this is probably, again, just this is him playing Anytime and me just following along, having never played it before, and just kind of learning it on the fly.
I'm so downhearted since you said we're through.
I'm going to put on some headphones.
But if you change your mind, I'll come back to you anytime you're feeling lonely. Anytime you're feeling blue.
Okay, so you can see like he botched a chord there. Not the most brilliant vocal. It's a little subdued. So this was kind of a rehearsal take. I mean, and did he count it in? I'm curious. Let me see.
It's a remarkable instrument. Well, you know, that's like where they went to the factory and played a bunch of them and took the best one.
And only took this one, right.
So you can see right there, like, so we're just talking, and then I did something on the bass here. It looks like I kicked the mic or something.
Yeah.
I was just making some, a little hot on the preamp.
Okay, or...
He didn't even count it in. He just starts. So this is very in the spirit of the blues. You just kind of just take it. So we wound up doing, again, that's kind of, I would consider that a rehearsal take. Then we probably did a second one. This looks like it was okay, maybe aborted slightly. And then we did 2 additional takes here, probably just back to back with a little break. And this actually looks like we just kind of rolled through it. And then, so what we did, a combination of, looks like about 5 different takes, just live. And it was the last one, in fact, that wound up becoming the master. So this here, this is, now again, this is not mastered, that you'll hear on the actual finished version of the record, but this is the original session, the actual take that made up the final master. Now, this did have some overdubs. I wound up overdubbing some background vocals on top of this after the fact. But you can kind of take a listen here, and this is the original take that made the EP. Take a quick listen.
1, 2.
And here he's actually counting it in. Let's see, did I say something about counting it?
Yeah. Let's do one more.
What do you think? There was something on your bass you didn't like?
Let's do one more.
That sounds very like me. Let's just do one more, right? Because again, I'm learning. I learn these songs on the fly with him. I never know what he's going to play. So this was the key take.
Yeah. Let's do one more.
Okay.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4. I'm so downhearted since you said we're through. But if you change your mind,
Okay. I see. Why is the mic coming in so hot? That's really odd. Thank you for that, Tim. How's this? Is this better? I also noticed I had lost sync on. I have. No one cares, but so everything is routed through one sound device into another sound device via SpeedIF, and it had flipped from SpeedIF clock sync to internal. How is that sounding now, Evil Cerise? Better? No clipping, hopefully. There's been no gain adjustment, so it should be all right. Also, there shouldn't be any clickies anymore. So you tell me that. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. So, Galtham, can you remove surrounding echo in Audition CC? You're using a Rode NTA. I can hear a little surround echo. Is that a problem? And thank you, Leonardo and Armando. So I'm assuming you're asking if you can sort of de-reverb something or remove reverb. I'm guessing that's what your question is. So the truth is, maybe. Now, in general, and we'll get back to mixing. This is part of having the live chat, though. So you'll forgive, of course, all the tangential anecdotes about things, but you know, if you watch my streams, it's all about knowledge and knowledge sharing. Traditionally, in general, trying to remove reverb from a recording is virtually, I won't say impossible, very, very difficult. Because, and it's difficult for a number of reasons, because ultimately you're not just only trying to remove reverb and echo, and this is typically the result of either having mics, you know, too far away from the speaker or the person talking, assuming it's talking that you're working with. So you're not only trying to remove the echo and the ambience, but you're also ultimately trying to adjust the space of the speaker to that microphone, or bringing him forward. Mic is still pretty hot, huh? Gosh, what happened? It's strange. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna drop my gain a little bit here. How's that? Better? Sorry. Yeah, it shouldn't. That's weird. I wonder if did someone in my household play with my stuff. I don't lock this room. I should lock this room. Kids. All right. So that's really the issue, right? You're dealing with trying to remove ambience or decay, but you're also trying to readjust space. And that's the challenge, because while there are some ways, and I've talked about this with using different sorts of gating techniques and equalization, where you might not necessarily be able to actually remove or attenuate the echo, you can shorten the decay via a gate And then as well, you can then use equalization to emphasize fundamental frequencies of the person's speaking voice. So what you're effectively doing is you're trying to lessen some of that background surround echo and just kind of simulate the voice being pushed forward. You're never going to be able to remove the distance of the voice to the diaphragm of the microphone. That's really the challenge. So and there's even plugins out there now that can de-reverb things. I mean, I've heard some of them, and I would say there's limited success with those. So if you were looking for a native way to try out de-reverbing, and again, I don't say that this is going to do it, but this is just a preset that we happen to have. Inside of Adaptive Noise Reduction, which you can access, as you saw, by going to Effects, Noise Reduction, Adaptive, we actually have a preset in here called De-Reverb Single Source. And this does, in some cases, a fairly decent job of, again, minimizing some of the echo or decay of a very reverberant recording. That's not to say that you're also not going to have some artifacting when doing that, because you're really, this is the holy grail. This is like, as content-aware Phil was for Photoshop, de-reverbing is kind of that same, like, oh, if we could just do this. Unfortunately, though, I've never heard a solution that's really perfect. I've seen some examples where it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty good, better, not magnificent. And then in a lot of cases, it just doesn't really do much. So outside of doing something like this, as I mentioned, what you can do is use a combination, and now we make it really easy. With the new dynamics effect, you have the auto gate. So you can use the gate here. So if, imagine if I were talking and it was like very echoey. I can use the gate to basically close to, again, shorten those echoes, all right? So that's one part of it. And then the second part is, and you can do this via your ears sonically, or you can use spectral frequency to assist you visually, or you can use real-time frequency analysis. Listen to where the fundamentals of the speaking voice are, and these are pretty much all within the same range for all people, really. You're going to see the major differences will be in the bass range, but in general, people speaking voices somewhere between 125 hertz and 1K, you're going to see a lot of fundamentals of their speech in there. And then you could use something like a parametric EQ or a graphic EQ to really pull out those specific frequencies, just so that the dialogue, the person speaking, is a bit more intelligible. That's ultimately what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to make that echoey recording more understandable. So that's sort of a more manual way to do it. And again, the success there is, well, one, there's no real artifacting because you're not trying to remove something artificially. It's just that you're left with slightly less decay of echo, and then using EQ to kind of emphasize fundamental frequencies. And then if you want to simulate pushing things forward, you can use a little bit of compression and increase your output gain, or your makeup gain, as it's referred to in some plugins, to, again, just squash down the dynamics and push things a bit forward. It's not an absolute, it's not guaranteed, but it can do some impressive things. Exactly. Yep, and Bill says it right there. Yep, hard gate with a low threshold, and that'll, again, at least attenuate or cut off the decays of echoes. I used to do a lot of work with a lot of wedding videographers who would capture people in churches, and the camera is all the way up in by the organ, 20 meters up and 30 meters across. That's where the people are talking. So it's just this big echoey mess. Those recordings, there's just not so much you can do except to make it a little bit more intelligible, a little bit better to understand. And again, using the gate to cut it off so it's not, everything doesn't sound like, a sung intro to Fortnite, or whatever. All right. Cool. Okay. Armando. Speed if clock issues sync suck. Yes. Fortunately, it's usually pretty stable. But yeah, it's funny. Speed if is so old already, but it's still a standard. Okay, so let's go back. So anyway, so that was what you just heard there. This was the original, again, final mixed but not yet mastered version of Anytime. I just like this one section. I'll play this for you because this is the background vocals introduced, which kind of just give it this real old-timey feel.
If you change your mind, I'll come back for you. Anytime you're feeling lonely, anytime you're feeling weak, anytime you get downhearted, that will prove that your love for me. Anytime you're thinking of me, that's the time I'll be thinking of you.
Okay. And part of how, if you're listening to that, so there's a good example of some very echoey vocals, right? And part of how I achieved that particular sound, in terms of the mix sounds, you can see I've got it on a bus here, on a send, sending that to a specific reverb bus. And now, whereas like last week I was showing some native plugins and things, this one I just happened to be using this Waves plugin here, which is called H-Reverb. I've had this for ages, and very, very super long decay. You can also see that I have this at 100% wet, which is curious because actually I wasn't sending the vocal pre-fader. I was sending it post-fader, but ultimately I just wanted the signal to be completely awash in reverb, just to give it that very kind of ethereal, but at the same time sparse kind of sound, right? This is such a minimal recording. You can even see that the preset that I modified but worked off of is this one here, large dark vocal plate. So again, just to kind of add to that, there's always a bit of darkness, particularly in these older blues tunes. There's often, double meanings, double entendres, all kinds of things in the lyrics, and it just kind of added to that sound and to the feel. You can also see in here that you even have some dynamic controls for the reverb with this particular plugin. Okay, so that was Anytime. So let's now go to a new song, one that I've kind of done a little bit of review on. I think I copied over. I've got some things. Okay, so here's I just did a quick rough mix on this. So I've got Fuzzy going through our studio reverb, which based on this kind of looks like I was doing more of a hall style reverb on his voice. I'm using the Waves emulation of the Fairchild 670 and or 660 limiters, very famous, very famously used on Ringo Starr's drums and countless things on Beatle recordings and tons of British recordings. This is one of my favorite sounding compressor limiters of all time. It has an incredibly thumpy, big, very analog processed kind of sound to it. And again, for this style of music, it really lends itself well. You can even see that, and this is something which you'll see in a lot of modern plugins too, you can even add on the sort of the mains power to the sound. So you're basically introducing, it's not necessarily 60 cycle hum, although it is. It's some electrical noise from the mains, which all of these compressors experienced, right? And that's why there's also 50 for those on the other side of the pond. So it's just really, really wonderful, and it really brings a nice color to the sound. And in particular, where I have, in this case, stereo mic'd guitar, it just really sounds great. So, okay. So let me see now, which one are we looking at? Okay, so we're looking at this one here. So this is a new tune. This one's called Pennies from Heaven. And this is also, it's another old school blues cover. This is from the early 20s, I believe, or mid 20s. A lot of the stuff in Fuzzy's repertoire is from that era. And what you can see is I've got my my marker here, where I always indicate like best takes. By the way, that's all being done on the fly as I'm kind of, going through them. And this one, not unlike Anytime, this one was a bit more complex. We had kind of our rehearsal take. This looks like we had a couple of breakdowns and then another full take, and then once again it was that last one where we just kind of nailed it. So I haven't really listened to this since it was tracked last July. So this will be kind of fun to listen to. I'm curious. And I tagged this as being slated for the next EP. So you want to take a listen with me? And then we're going to start working on this a little bit. We won't listen to the whole thing. Just kind of get into it and just hear what we've got going on, all right?
Count it off. Yeah, I think that's actually what we did yesterday.
Might have been. You
Yeah,
ready?
Okay. Yeah, let's count it off. All right, one more time.
By the way, I'm curious in the chat. So this is one thing that I did on this EP, and this is something I've been doing in the studio for years. I have always loved, and this was long before like Beatles Anthology left all that stuff, and there were other albums in the past that have done this, but if you listen to this EP, you'll notice I left in a lot of the pre and or post song recording chatter, and all the stuff like little false starts, or in fact there was more on the EP. I took it out because in an era where people are so playlist conscious, having too much talking up front where there's no music it likely caused people just to skip the track altogether. So I had to minimize on some of it. But you'll notice that I leave a lot of that stuff in there, particularly at the ends. And I'm just curious in the chat if any of you watching, if you like that kind of stuff. I love it. I love hearing because you're hearing the actual take happening, and you're hearing what's going on in advance of it happening. I just find that really fun. And again, it's, a way to kind of experience or re-experience in this case, because I was part of it, what it was like when it was tracked. All right. So let's take a quick listen. Pennies from Heaven.
Okay. Yeah, let's count it off. All right, one more time. From a clean start, 'cause I'm kind of oh, it stuff's right. Okay.
You see, like, he's still starting while I'm talking. Like, okay, wait, a clean start. It's producer right here. It's my producer hat, but also bass player hat, right? So, here we go.
Ready?
Yeah.
Every time it rains, ladies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains ladies from heaven? You find your potion falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trading for a package of sunshine flowers. If you want the things you love, you must have a shower. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven and me.
Okay. So yeah, so that kind of gives you an idea of some like just the raw qualities. You can see there's nothing on the bass at all, no effects. I did have a little bit of EQ on here, which if we just kind of solo this, and really from the looks of it, it's just A little bit of a boost at 64, again, the fundamental bass frequency there. Pulling out about 4 dB at 173 hertz, very, very narrow. That's where you tend to get the beginnings of some muddiness, which it's, you know, this acoustic Martin bass is very, very big and very boomy. So it accentuates, you know, especially because we're boosting at 64, the octave above that 128, so and then the octave above that 256. So you start getting a lot of combined signals in there. So I just pulled out a little bit at 173. Also, 418, you can see I've pulled it out around 2 dB there, very super narrow, and then gave it a little bit of a boost at around 4K, just about 2 decibels there. Slightly wider, just to give a little bit more of the string and sort of neck sound in there. So, and I like the way that sounds a lot. I think it sounds pretty good, but it needs some tightening. So let's go ahead and start by putting a little compression on there and letting you get to hear kind of what that Fairchild 660 mono limiter sounds like. Evil Cerise, to be honest, I can't deal with talking in my daily rotation playlist. If I'm listening to a particular song on purpose, that's just fine, but I have a strict no talking. See, and that's exactly what I'm saying. I know, and that's the thing. And I swear to you, it was, I think the day before I had to do the submission for sort of final approval of the EP with the audio files. I don't think it was the day before. I think it was hours before. I actually... And I've done this so many times where I've like last minute made a pretty significant change to a master file. Sometimes it didn't go very well. My release of a song called Sabi Sabi, I remastered the entire thing minutes before I had to upload this file for the digital distributor. I don't know, and it was like late at night. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what possessed me to do that. I despise the way that sounds. I'm so unhappy with that. And I did it. It's my fault. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking. In any case, so let's go ahead and grab our mono compressor here. And when I did this already, seeing as these are the same sessions, same miking, same position, these may have been a day apart, but everything was ultimately the same. I made a preset of my bass from this session already, so I can recall that. I think the settings are already brought up here. Just to pull that up and automatically apply that, which will just kind of put us right where we need to be. And then we can start tweaking things accordingly. This song obviously is a little bit faster, so I might need to make slight adjustments to the threshold and or input gain, because it's just I'm playing it quicker, maybe even a little bit more staccato than the other song to keep the notes tighter. So perhaps a couple of slight adjustments, and again I can start with the mains on or off. Again, this just gives it a little bit more of a flavor, a little bit more dirt, but we'll introduce that in a second. So let's take a listen here. And I see Armando. Yep. So you believe it does give a nice overview of what it felt like in the room. Yeah. So again, like I think some people really like it, but as Evil Cerise mentioned, if you're a playlist listener, it's a drag because, right, you're like grooving and then, you know, suddenly it stops because now you're hearing people go, oh, no, wait, hold on. No, do it again. Okay. Da-da-da-da. Oh, no, stop. You ready? Yeah. Yeah, so I get it. It sucks for playlists, but for the experience, I do enjoy it. So you'll probably hear more of that from me. All right, let's take a listen to this. I'll start with it off and then I'll kick it in. Nice, thumpy. By the way, if you're wondering what time constant is, so, and I'm going to make a couple adjustments here. I'm watching what the meter is doing as it's releasing the bass signal, because you can hear I'm playing this pretty staccato. So you can readjust the time constant to really flow in time with the playing style. Again, subtle changes to just kind of accentuate that those tighter attacks. See, it's too long here. We want it to recover really fast. Now the vocal you're hearing there is just the bleed from the stereo mics. Just want to get to it. I totally get that, my friend. So I'm using a little makeup gain here because he's playing so soft, so softly, and the dynamics they're kind of all over the place. So when we kick this in, I don't know if Fuzzy would love this, and the thing is, it's revealing a couple of not great notes per se, but I think in context with everything, it actually works pretty well. Now, one of the things that I want on this is a little bit of echo, because even when we have the vocal in here, I like having the a little bit of definition on the voice there, but I think we need some room ambience on this guitar, and maybe even on the bass. It just sounds a little too dry. Okay, so to do that, we're going to make a new bus. So let's do just that. So from here, let's go ahead and add a new bus. All right, and we'll call this Git Amb for guitar ambience, and we're going to leverage this for both the guitar and the bass. All right, and we're also going to do, we'll keep this post fader as well. So meaning that the master fader for this track will control simultaneously the ambient sound as well, so that they follow each other. Just to give it a little bit of space in the room. I talk about this a lot, about recreating sort of room tone and warmth. And this is also stereo mic'd, as you can see. This is with a matched pair of Audio-Technica 4041s. What that means is that when they're creating and building these microphones in the labs, that they're designed, fused together from the same materials, same time, same place, same person, same everything. So they are sonically matched. A lot of times when people mic stuff in stereo, it's like this mic, same mics, but they're not sonically matched, so they actually will vary. These two have identical sounds. At least that's what I paid for, and that's what I was told. No, they really do, and I've used them for years. So, but as you can see, if you just listen here in the waveform view, it just gives you a very nice, wide kind of sound. Kind of like hear his like breathing and moving around with it. I love that kind of stuff. So we're going to do this guitar ambience, and let's go ahead and add. I'll go ahead and we'll start with our studio reverb. I like some of the ambiences in here. I'll be honest. I was thinking probably of going with the H-Verb again because they've got really magnificent sounding ambience. But let's go to room ambience 2. This is one of my faves. Quick thing here. First, room size. So I don't want the room huge. 30 is a little small for me. Let's make this around 60. Decay, 1600 milliseconds, also very, very tiny. I don't want it to sound like a box, so maybe we'll just up this to around just under 2000 milliseconds. A little bit of early reflection. Again, this is going to give it a bit more of that, you know, feeling of things kind of bouncing off the walls. Now, the reason why it's so dry is because that was actually recorded here in the studio. This was actually in advance of me getting together all the soundproofed walls and everything, but I did have us baffled and separated with 4-inch thick foam panels. So it kept everything really dry. Yes, there's bleed, but really, really dry. There's no ambience in this room at all. That's why you don't hear any when I'm talking to you. There's no echo at all in here, which is ideal for mixing. But it's a little too dry for me. So we want to kind of put him back in the environment. So that's what we're doing with this. High frequency cut, we'll leave that where it is. Low cut, same. I don't want any additional damping because it's been dampened enough just naturally. And diffusion, we'll see. Probably leave that at around 20%. And then we're just going to kind of play around here with the wet dry. So when I'm going post fader, I'll typically keep the dry signal anywhere from 70 to 100. It just kind of depends. We'll take a listen now. I'll probably keep it at 100 and then just gradually adjust that wet signal until it's kind of where I want it to be. So let's go ahead and do that. So here, I'm just going to solo, make sure we're in the guitar here. Okay. I'm going to increase the send level. So we're actually sending something over here. Okay, now we're just sending the same dry signal. Now let's add some wet. Little bit more decay. Let's see. So here it is, totally dry. What you can also see is that I'm sending this to the reverb, to the ambience, also kind of panning him more over to the right. So the signal that's being reflected in terms of the room, whereas he's focused on the left, but the room, the ambience of where you're hearing him back is actually sort of resonating from the right. And this just kind of helps to emphasize, again, a little bit more space. That might even be a little much, although I kind of like the way that's sounding. With, as you can see, about a 43% wet. And we just upped that decay a little bit to around 2200 milliseconds. So let's do the same for the bass. Now, again, I would, you think bass and what? So yeah, you don't typically want to send bass to a reverb. The difference is here, this is not reflective, or let me rephrase that. This isn't long decay reverb, it's just room ambience. It doesn't always work with the bass. We got to tackle a little bit of the EQ as well. But just to kind of, I don't want it to sound too dry, because then it almost sounds like an overdub. And it's not, right? It's live. So you want to put that bass in the same environment as well. So just a little. And this is where we might even, be a little conscious of this low frequency cut. Maybe cut it even a little bit higher. Cut off everything around 280. Just to ensure that none of that low frequency muddiness or rumble or those fundamentals are being reverberated at all, right? We just kind of want that, mid-range and slightly above mid-range to just create that room ambience, okay? So we're going to do the same thing here. Let's see, I've got the bass. Let me solo the bass here. We just see where we are on the track. All right, and let's play this back. We need to put it on the guitar ambience. Notice same thing, setting the ambience to the other side, right? No ambience. With ambience.
Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trading for a package of sunshine.
So it's totally dry now.
If you want the things you love, keep aside showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run your tree. There'll be pennies meant for you and me.
Okay. So again, just kind of create a little bit more space, a little bit more dimension, a little bit more width. Hey, what's up, Des? Nice. Evil Cerise, nice to see more audio workflow. Ah, thank you, sir. Yeah, I enjoy it too. And, these things are just, mixing is long process. Sometimes longer than other things. Okay. So the bass is sounding pretty good. We got to work a little bit on the EQ, but I want to just kind of get the lead vocal sounding just a little bit tighter. Now you might ask, how come I'm not compressing the lead vocal? And part of the reason for that is, there's two reasons. One, so because all of this is tracked live and there's bleed and he's already singing very quietly, I don't want to over accentuate any of the bleed from the acoustic guitar. I mean, he was singing very, very softly. So you have to be a bit mindful of that. Now, you can still control, again, some of those out-of-range dynamic peaks, but if I look at his vocal track here, you can see that he's really, that the softness is very consistent, right? It's not like there's really, maybe we have one slight peak there. I'm looking, I don't see anything that's more than 2 dB, maybe 3 dB louder than everything else. So, and that tells me, because again, here's like the acoustic guitar by itself, I don't have much room to play with. So maybe if I were compressing this, I could use something like a 2-to-1 just to even out some of those dynamics and push him a little bit forward. That's probably as much as I would go. And I wouldn't go terribly aggressive with the threshold because I don't want to amplify more of that guitar bleed on there. For this song, I might need it though because he's singing so quietly. So let's take a listen and kind of reevaluate what's happening here.
There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.
Okay, so this is just a guitar section.
Time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from Cell function falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trading for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, then you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.
You can see this is what I want. I don't want it to be compressing or touching the guitar. I really just want it to kick in once he starts singing. And if we don't see that gain reduction meter exceeding 2 dB there, then we know that this is set properly, right? It has to exceed 2 decibels above that threshold, in this case minus 26, for it to even to begin to kick in. So, and you can see I had to give it a little bit of output gain boost just to bring him a little bit forward. So that might be just enough. And this is using our tube modeled native compressor. You can see I've got a fairly quick attack here, 9 milliseconds, pretty standard for a vocal of this type. And then a fairly quick release as well. These are just short attack transients, so I don't want it to like hold it there very long. I just want it to catch some of those, and while it's at it, just provide a little bit of additional makeup gain to push it a little bit forward. Now I will tell you this, I'm actually really liking the reverb sound here. And I think what's interesting about this is, so it's a fairly large, you can see large room. We've got a fairly big decay, almost 4.5 seconds. Now we're not hearing all of that because we only have 39% wet, but a 4.5 second decay. Early reflections. Now again, if we want a bit more space to that lead vocal, we could pump this up. I don't want too much of that. I want it to sound a bit more classic, which is why I have, think of the high frequency, low frequency cut almost as like an EQ. Or really, more importantly, it's more like a low pass, high pass bell for where that reverb is going to resonate. So there's nothing resonating below 300, nothing resonating above 4K. And that's going to give you this nice little mid-range kind of bell curve sort of boost. And if you're looking to recreate the sound of traditional echo chambers or sort of classic hall reverb emulations, you're usually going to find that the high frequency is rolled off somewhere between 4,000 hertz and maybe even as high as 5,500 hertz. When you get above 55, now you're getting into sibilant land, right? That's already like, that's high frequency. We don't want that. So think of it this way. Analog telephones, AM radio, you're cut off at around 4K, 4.5K approximately. So you're going to get this nice little kind of mid-range boost to the reverb ambience, and it just gives it this warmer kind of classic, again, a bit old school, because listen to the type of music it is, kind of feeling. We've got a lot of damping on here. Oh, whoops, I didn't mean to move that. That's all right. Put that back to where it was, close enough. We've got some damping on here. That's okay. Maybe I'd back that off a little, although I kind of like the sound. And then we're also having it diffuse, right? So we're not too concerned. We're not terribly concerned about keeping all that reverb sort of completely focused. We are allowing it to kind of diffuse and change as those reverberations, as those subtle echoes decay over time. By the way, this is mono. If you're wondering why you're not seeing the width field illuminated, that's because we've got this reverb on a mono track on a mono file. So it will actually play in mono. Now, if we wanted to create a bus and send his mono signal to a stereo bus and do that, you can. The problem with that is, though, now you're creating this very sort of big space. And to emulate, to simulate that older school feel and to really get that intimacy, I love a mono reverb. Now, a lot of people might ask, why are you inserting the reverb here? Shouldn't you put that on a mono bus and then do it that way? Yes, you absolutely can. I just didn't here. Sometimes I insert reverb because nothing else is happening here, so I can return the reverb to that channel. But then you really have to be mindful of this wet-dry balance here. So you can see that's why the dry is at 100%, and then I'm using the wet to really just introduce exactly how much of that returned reverb I want. All right? Long intros on these songs. Jeez, where does it start?
Every time they might you there.
Okay, we're going to put a new marker in there. That's going to be where the vocal starts. I'll type that in here. It's my camera's over top of it, but I'm typing in vocal start. And you'll see it appear right up here. There it is. Vocal start.
Every time it rains.
So here's no reverb.
Pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trading for a package of sunshine
So
flowers.
soft, right?
If you want the things you love, then you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me. Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trading for a package of sunshine flowers.
Okay. And that kind of just sort of gives you an idea of some of the things that I'll likely tweak on this. Now, this still needs a little bit more tweaking, so what I'll first do is just go ahead and save this. It's going to be number 2, PFH. I think I might even have a number 2, so I'm going to call this 2A. Naming conventions. All right. And, you know, we could take it a step further from there. But again, so combination of things, right? Using one of my favorite third-party plugins from Waves, I don't even know how to pronounce Jack Joseph. Is it Puig? Puig? Emulation of the Fairchild 660, 670 limiters on guitar and bass to just give it that warm analog thump. Probably even increase the threshold again a little bit more on that bass to really snap those attacks. We used a little bit of studio reverb for our guitar ambience, so using all native reverbs for this one. Again, nice room ambience preset, and just modified it ever so slightly by adjusting the decay. Again, adjusting some of the reflections and the width and the cutoffs here. Again, trying to leave a little bit more of that room. Now notice, this is again what I just said about whereas the lead vocal has that kind of more mid-rangey, old-school mono sound with a cutoff at 4K, here, the room ambience, I want it to be a little bit brighter, and I want it to be stereo, right? Because we're miking the guitar in stereo. So this is where it's sent to a stereo bus. It's a little bit wider, it's a little bit brighter, but it has and just enough of that early reflection, but no damping at all, because the room's already damp. I mean, dampened, not damp, dampened, and not much diffusion. We kind of want it to linger where it is, but it's a short decay anyway, so you wouldn't necessarily hear much diffusion even if we increase that. In fact, it would actually it would accentuate and sound kind of more wet than it would need to be. So I left the diffusion at around 20%. And then we used our native tube modeled compressor on the voice, just to, again, control some of the dynamics, to bring things back down, and then to push everything just a little bit forward, but setting the threshold carefully so that it's not kicking in when he stops singing and moves away from the mic and keeps playing guitar. We don't want to push that forward. That's already being controlled on the independent guitar track. All right. Hello, Isaac from Australia. Chris W, 10 out of 10. Ah, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. What's happening, everybody? All right. So, my friends, again, next time, hopefully, we'll have some cameras from above. I'll move some of that stuff around. The Moog, by the way, is up there as well. You can't see that, but I'll pull the Moog out perhaps for the next Friday session. And I hope you've enjoyed this live mixing session today. Weren't too many questions, but I appreciate the comments. Thanks for sticking around. Thank you for watching. For those of you in the US, of course, it's a holiday weekend, so I hope you have a good one. And for those of you in other parts of the world, thank you so much for joining me. Sincerely appreciate your time on a Friday, in the afternoon, in the morning, in the evening, or Saturday, wherever you are in the world. In fact, I guess in Australia, yes, it's already Saturday, right? So in parts of Europe, it's already Saturday. So thank you very much for joining me. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.